Hello, fellow homeschoolers. My name is Deshelle McVeigh from HideTheChocolate.com, where I write about our relaxed Charlotte Mason homeschool and the crazy, amazing fun of homeschooling and parenting. I also am the author of dozens of online book clubs for kids from preschool to high school at my site, literaryaadventuresforkids.com. I'm so excited to be here today to talk to you about our relaxed Charlotte Mason homeschool. So let me get started by telling you a little about Miss Charlotte Mason. Charlotte Mason was an educator at the turn of the 20th century. She was a pioneer, a trailblazer, even a trendsetter for education in her time. She looked at education as a lifetime endeavor and children as people who were completely capable of learning and directing their own education. She believed that children should learn through living and by experiencing education through hands-on exploration. She was a proponent of art and music appreciation, nature study, and discipline. Her ideas helped to shape a new type of education. So what do I mean by a relaxed Charlotte Mason homeschool? Well, I like to think of a relaxed Charlotte Mason homeschool as what Miss Mason would have taught had she lived in the 21st century. It's my personal belief that she would have embraced our technology and used it with gusto. She would have realized that advancements in technology and society should be used to help broaden our knowledge of the world. And perhaps she would have added a movie day or a plant identifying app to her philosophy. I once heard the phrase, "Charlotte, let your bun down," and it perfectly fits. In a relaxed Charlotte Mason homeschool, Charlotte lets her hair down. She realizes the importance of modern literature and uses tablets and computers to enhance her teaching. And she adds some enchantment to her homeschool because she realizes that education is not in competition with technology, but in a partnership. So you may be wondering what our relaxed Charlotte Mason homeschool looks like. Each day is focused around living books. These books should be exciting and stimulating to our children. They should inform their worldview and instruct their hearts as well as their minds. Some characteristics of living books would be those in which the author has a love of the subject and sparks the imagination and enthusiasm of the topic in the reader. Books that are written in narrative form. Ones that broaden of their vocabulary. Books that take the reader to faraway times and places. They can be classics or even modern. Many people would suggest that this is a literature-based curriculum, and it is. Literature is a huge focus of the relaxed Charlotte Mason method. But it doesn't just stop with language arts. It continues into history, geography, science, art, music, and even math. To help us learn spelling, grammar, and working memory, we use copywork and dictation. Copywork is the transcription of quotes from our literature. It is copied as perfectly as possible and with attention to the spelling and punctuation used. Dictation, however, is the transcribing of literature. Dictation can be done in various ways. For younger students, you might choose a form of dictation used by the French, where they give the student the copywork as dictation, but leave out words that the student has to fill in correctly. But in its basic form, the teacher reads the copywork and the student copies it exactly onto the paper. Charlotte also encouraged narration to help children process what they learned by retelling the lesson. This not only helps the teacher to know what areas the student needs help on, but those that they understand as well. But it also helps the student to commit to the learning to their memory, which aids in later recall. We learn about the world around us by stepping out into nature and studying plants, animals, and insects in our own backyards and our communities. We learn about the arts by studying painters, sculptors, musicians, poets, and playwrights. But we don't just read about them in a book. We learn by watching their plays, admiring their artwork, and even trying to imitate their works and be inspired to create our own. In a relaxed Charlotte Mason homeschool, we add a little magic dust that I like to call enchantment. Enchantment is that little spark that keeps your homeschool from getting boring, stale, and unpleasant. It's not always a daily activity or even a weekly activity. It is instead that little moment of inspiration, of creativity that you throw into your homeschool when it works for you. That may mean one day we have math and milkshakes, or we go field schooling to a place we studied in our history books. Maybe it means we add china cups, tea, and scones and have a poetry tea time. Some days we learn about great literature by exploring our latest novel with rabbit trails and book club parties. This may seem a little daunting, but it doesn't have to be. The first step to adding enchantment starts with your children. Think of what inspires them, what interests them, what makes them feel creative and energized, or might give them a little boost. And then next decide how you can feed their interest. What activities can you add that will bring joy to your day? Do you have supplies for those activities? Will this plan keep you from feeling exhausted, stressed, and overwhelmed? Then choose one thing, just one thing. Choosing one thing you can add to your day that will add a little magic dust. Don't try to add everything you thought of all at once, or you'll become overwhelmed. Slowly add in 1 or 2 things at a time. Feel free to change those inspiring things up each week or month. Also, feel free to drop things that don't bring joy or cause too much stress. Do what works best for your family. And lastly, choose a time that you know is best for you. When do you have time to follow a rabbit trail? When can you spend all day making a mess and not get stressed out about it? What day do you have free to go on an adventure? Choose a time that will allow you to explore without worrying about deadlines or schedules. But this may still seem a little overwhelming, and I understand that. I get it. Implementing Charlotte Mason was difficult for us in the beginning. I loved the philosophy, but it was so foreign to me. It's a very different approach than traditional homeschooling, but I found it to be a gentler approach that is more natural to children and their learning. You can learn more about our Charlotte Mason homeschool at hidethechocolate.com. I hope to see you there and to get to know you.
Hello, good afternoon. I would like to talk to you a little bit about what we call literature-based learning, which is the homeschool method we use at my home with my 10 children. We've been using literature-based since the beginning. One of the reasons I chose to go with a literature-based curriculum was that I was already reading to my kids at nap time and at bedtime. And when it came to begin homeschooling, one of the things I really wanted to do was continue the habit we had already created and get school credit for it. So when I started looking for curriculums, I looked for a curriculum that matched what we were already doing in our everyday life. And that's one of the best pieces of advice I can give you. As you're looking at curriculum styles and as you're looking at learning methods for teaching in your homeschool, look for the things that are already successful in your homeschool life today. For us, reading was a huge aspect of our everyday life. So we chose literature-based. Now, literature-based just means that the majority of our education time is spent in reading live books. Similar to Charlotte Mason, but less emphasis on nature and outings and artwork and more specific to our reading time. Now, with our reading time, it typically will cover our social studies, our current events, geography, history, even part of our sciences are covered by reading living books. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit of an example of what our typical homeschool looks like for an American history unit that we do. This would typically spread over a full year. So what we choose first, and I'll share a few of these with you. The first thing we're going to go with is what we like to call a spine. A few choices that we have, depending on the age group of your children, you're going to choose what's appropriate to the majority of your students. The beauty of this method is that you can teach multiple levels and grades within your homeschool by reading to all of your children at the same time. So these are just a few examples of a history curriculum that we would use as a spine. This covers from the discovery of America to independence, and if you wanted to go further back, this actually goes from Christopher Columbus to Washington. So you can choose what time frame that you want to stay within. Some people would do these within the same year each half, but you can really choose how you want to. This one is just an American history, so if we were going to do American history for the year, we typically would choose one reference book as kind of a spine, And I like to do a current book. This one is just American history. This one is a great book, but it's a little bit higher of a reading level. So that's where you can kind of read through and become familiar with the needs for your family and the age groups that you have. This I would typically read to the children on a daily basis. Here's one that is a little bit more visually based. So as you read, your kids can look and see. This is one that we use maybe a 1 or 2 of the page spreads per day. So as it covers maybe relevant information that we're covering for that week or that day, we'll add that book as we need it and cover a little bit of an overview of a broader subject. So that's what we try to keep as the base for our year, and that we kind of follow throughout the whole season. I'll share the next aspect of living books. I do also like to have a historical guideline, so I try to get a history book that is further back. This one was the Berlin Diary. This was written in like 1944 or 46, so just shortly after the end of the World Wars. So just an example, obviously it's a different time period, but I like to try to find some older historical books to get a current perspective and a historical perspective at the same time. This one is an old history book, so the same, this is from, I think 1810. Oh no, this copy is 1929, so it has his birth year in there, but 1929. So I like to cross-reference the stories that we read in our modern history book with the stories in an older history book as well, and I think it gives us a broader perspective, and I try to do that in all areas of our learning. I try to get perspectives from 2 points of view, and if we're reading about the world wars, I try to get perspectives from different cultures and countries and their point of view of the war at the same time. What this does is it gives us a broad approach to a subject. So then when our children are referring back, they have a deep wealth of information that they can draw from. This helps us remember what's going on in history way better than if we were just tagging names and dates in short incremental stories without any sort of context to tie them down to. The literature base really tries to take a smaller use of our timeline and broaden it by giving us deep stories to relate to and characters that we can take time to understand and get to know. So here would be a section of the books that I would read to my children throughout the school year. So this is just a little bit of a reference if we were doing American history, then Johnny Tremaine, during the Revolutionary War. So I would go through maybe my public library and I would pick out some books that are in that time period. It's very searchable as well. So when you go online, you can put in a time period and you can get a list of books. I do use Sunlight curriculum, which has time frames and periods in history already divided up throughout your whole entire high school career, or actually your whole entire homeschooling career. So if you wanted the work done for you, that is a curriculum vendor that does that. There are many vendors that create whole packaged curriculums that go through different time periods throughout the entire semesters. I like that Homeschool covers American history in the very beginning of the elementary, then further in depth in middle school, and then it does 2 years of American history in depth in the high school curriculum. So I like that because Sunlight is also not North America centric. So this coming year, we are actually doing the Eastern Hemisphere Explorer, which covers the entire Eastern Hemisphere and goes deep into the histories of many other cultures, which I enjoy spending time not in specific American history. I wanted to show you this because it's an easy subject that most of us are familiar with. Some of these titles you might be familiar with. We have Johnny Tremaine, Rifles for Waddy, The Journeyman, Across 5 Aprils, go across the 5 years of the Revolutionary War. War Comes to Willie Freeman. So these are all just stories that have engaging characters that make our children kind of get a broader scope and understanding of what was happening at the time and kind of see a little more deeply this time period of American history from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War. One other thing that I do like to add, and I feel like is very important, is I try to have have a lot of biographies at the same time. So the readers, some of those stories, if it's a little more difficult, I will read it. And typically I do the majority of the reading during the school day. I would say roughly an hour to 2 hours depending on the age group. And then I maybe will assign biographies or assign some of the easier to read books to my children to read themselves. And that also goes by determining their reading level. In the history, also these are a great American history guide, or just these little simplified books. They're really easy to read. One is Can You Make Them Behave, King George? What's the Big Idea, Ben Franklin? This one is Where Were You When It Happened, Paul Revere. So these are just a little bit shorter versions with more pictures and a little less words. So depending on your age group, you can have multiple ages within the same reading time, and maybe read the smaller books first and then excuse your younger children to go play while you read a more in-depth character book, or maybe a little meatier of a subject to your older children, depending on their attention span and time frame. I usually try to add some biographies that are of interest for whatever children I have in this age group. So these ones are about children during different age groups, which I find gravitate towards their interest level. Then I try historical figures as well, so we have some interesting characters. These are available, like YWAM Publishing has lots of historical biographies from heroes of history. And then of course we've got some older books that have been a part of my library for ages. So George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, historical characters, we try to go ahead and get some information about them as well. And then this one is an older text type book, and this is Thomas Jefferson and His World. So with having a little bit of more textbook type, a little bit of a character type book, and then of course the historical fictions and like fictionalized events that still pertain a lot of the historical timeline and facts, you can give your child a very well-rounded look at a period of history. And when you go back, the names and dates, you'll find they understand the scope and sequence of the entire time frame much better when it becomes materialized in a story. And that's why we chose the living book method, was to help our kids have a broader understanding of things that were happening and maybe why they happen together. So at the end of our entire homeschool career, we have a visual timeline of stories in our head of the entire history from really creation to modern time. And that's our goal. But in the secondary goal is that our children learn to love stories. And that's the best part of literature based, is a lot of times our school day is spent curled up on the couch reading together. And you'd be amazed how much we can check off doing that, which at the end of the day leaves science, handwriting, math, and a little bit of language arts, which are subjects that sometimes I can have my children do in the early morning before we begin reading, or in the afternoon as a closeout time. So it really takes the burden of homeschooling off of larger families and multi-age group families, and also builds a pleasure of reading and learning together. So I would love to share more about any resources that you're looking for. I do have a blog. It's 200fingersandtoes.com, and we have lots of reviews on there. And also, if you're starting homeschooling, I do have a series that's a podcast. It is called In Due Season, and it's available on iTunes. And I have a homeschool quick startup guide with a huge list of resources of websites and book sites that you can check out as well. So I love being able to share with you about the literature-based homeschool method. And by all means, if you have any questions, share, and we would love to take them and answer you. Have a great day.
This is Ivy. I blog over at Homeschool on the Range. For 6 years, our family road schooled, which meant that we traveled around the United States with my husband while he was working contract jobs. He's done that all of our marriage, but after the boys and I staying at home for so long, we said, why don't we just join Dad? So that's what we did. We packed up our school, we hit the road, and we road schooled with him. If you're going to road school, there are a few things that you're going to want to know ahead of time. First of all is that you need to join HSLDA, which anyone should do whether you're road schooling or not. That is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and it's just a good idea to be members. The second thing that you want to know is what your state's requirements are. And that might be confusing if you're road schooling because you live in so many different places. For us, our state's requirements are for the state of Oklahoma because that's where we pay state taxes. This is where our home is. If you live in New York State, but you are spending 3 weeks in Texas or 3 months, it doesn't matter, you have to follow the New York State requirements for homeschooling, and that includes testing, portfolios, whatever kind of reporting you need to do. It goes with where your home state is. So that's kind of a big piece. Road schooling for us worked best when the kids were in elementary and middle school because we hit the different subjects each day. I always made sure to do reading and math no matter what every day. But as far as history and science and things like that, we were able to get most of that through the places that we visited. And that's where another big point comes into play. And that's planning ahead. Some people are not planners. Some people prefer to fly by the seat of their pants. Whichever one you are, I'm definitely more on this side, you want to know where you're going to be and what opportunities are available in that area. So, like we found out we were going to go to northern Vermont and northern New York State on one of these jobs. And so I did some research. Fort Ticonderoga is up there. We were there with Ethan Allen and the Green Mountain Boys. We did a unit study on the whole state of Vermont. We visited Fort Ticonderoga. We did the guided tours that were there. They also had some science and STEM projects there. This is where the video of the picture of the kids climbing in the cannons was taken from. And they want to go back to Fort Ti and do one of those redo pictures. I don't know if they'd be allowed to climb into the cannons now as big as they are. The point is, we knew we were going to Fort Ticonderoga. I did some research. I saw what was available in the area. I pulled some books. I pulled some activities so that we had a whole unit that centered around that spot. And we were only there for a week, so that was a shorter unit. We've spent longer periods of time at places like the Outer Banks, where we have studied marine biology and oceanography, geology of things like sand dunes, of course the history of aviation and the Wright brothers. For us, road schooling is about life experience. And it's not just about getting to go places and experience new things in the geography, but it's also about meeting people who are different, learning about different cultures, different ways of life. And there's so much culture just here within the United States that we're able to do that. We've got another lady coming on in a couple of minutes to talk about world schooling, which is going to be road schooling around the world. And of course, she has been able to expose her kids to so much more culture because of that. Once our kids hit high school, it became a little bit harder to road school because the kids are college bound, and as someone who has a master's in high school counseling, I know that they say that colleges are recruiting homeschool kids because they want those out-of-the-box thinkers, and that's wonderful, but it's still a very good idea to have all those boxes checked off on your transcript of required high school courses. So it became a little bit harder for us to spend all day at a museum and then come home and just do some math and language arts. We had more history and science and things that needed to be checked off in addition to that. That worked out all right for us because about 18 months ago our life situation changed anyway, so we had to come in off the road. That is when I disbanded the Gypsy Road blog and decided to write for Homeschool on the Range instead. Now, thanks to COVID and another change in situation, it looks like we might be going back on the road. I don't know if we're going to or not, though, because one of the kids is starting VOTEC this fall, and I think it'd be very difficult for him to go to VOTEC and us to be on the road. So that remains to be seen. Okay, Gypsy Road, the blog. What's the purpose of that? Record keeping. Where you're going, what you're doing. You need to keep a record of all of these things so that you can say, hey, yes, we're traveling around, and no, maybe we're not doing traditional school, but we are learning, and these are the things that we're learning. For me, Gypsy Road was that record. I was able to say, we went here, we did all of these activities, and here you go. Also, curriculum. You're going to want some sort of curriculum to take with you on the road. We always drove, and car space is at a premium. You don't want a third of that going to some box curriculum or some physical thing that you're bringing with you. So, a couple of books, yes. I always brought math with us. I mean, I just don't think you can do math digitally. That's my personal opinion. But there are a lot of digital options now that there weren't 8 years ago when we started hitting the road. And there's just so many things that you can choose from. If you've got a desktop and a tablet, You can download books from your library. You can do a lot of work through Google Classroom or just through online curriculum, video-based curriculum. So it doesn't take nearly as much space as it used to. If you want all of those courses laid out for you like a boxed curriculum, Schoolhouse Teachers is coming out with a boxed curriculum so that you can say, hey, I've got a third grader, I need all of the classes for that, and they will set you up with that as part of your membership. I'll put the link for that in our bundle of freebies section. What else? Just relax and have fun with it. You won't get to do it forever, most likely. I would not go back and undo anything about those 6 years, except for maybe I'd travel to more places and do more things and, worry a little bit less about some of the minutiae that we ran into along the way. That's time with your kids that you are never going to get back, and it creates such wonderful family memories. It exposes your kids to so much. And like I said, the kids are in school, high school now, and VOTEC, and there's always time to be a grown-up. There's not always time to travel the world extensively. Maybe you don't have the chance to road school or hit the road full-time or do any of those things, but you still want to experience this a little bit. Then I would suggest vacation schooling. Plan a place for 3 weeks, a month, however long you're able to take a vacation, and just go. If you're going for that length of time, don't bother bringing the curriculum. Just make a learning experience out of it. You do this every time you go to a museum or the zoo or anything like that. If you would like to find easy ways to incorporate learning into your travels, on our website we've got different unit studies for that. Enjoy the journey. Life's a big journey, just enjoy it. Hi, this is Ivy again. I know you're expecting someone else to talk about world schooling, but she had something come up and was unable to do it. Well, hi, sweet girl. Come to say hello? Look at the camera. Come here. Come on up. You don't want to get up? Anyway, world schooling. That's basically going to be road schooling, but, not domestically. It's going to be around the world. And Emily was going to talk to us about that, but she didn't have very good internet service and was unable to send us a video. That's one of the pitfalls of schooling in various places, is that sometimes there's just not good internet access. So a couple of misconceptions about road schooling and world schooling, though, that I did want to talk about, because honestly, I don't know very much about schooling around the world outside of the United States, other than a short trip into Canada and a short trip to Mexico. I haven't been around the world. It's definitely on my bucket list, but not financially at the moment. Okay, so financially, that's one of the misconceptions. A lot of people think that you have to have a lot of money to be able to do this, and you don't. It's more about priorities. People who... Go see Daddy, okay? Go see Daddy. People who choose to road school and world school often have jobs that give them some flexibility. Blogging could be one of those jobs. Trying to think what other positions. My husband works in contracts around the country. That's how we're able to do that. We are not swimming in money. There are people who will do just any kind of telecommuting, online work, any job that you can do that can be done from home, as long as you have a good internet access, can be done from anywhere around the world. Don't eat the camera. And what was the other one? Anyway, if you are interested in road schooling or world schooling, there is a place online called Full-Time Families. And those are people who live in RVs, people who travel around, people who school on the road full-time. I would recommend you check that out. It's called Full-Time Families, and that would be my best place for you to get started.
Hey y'all, my name is Alfreya, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how we homeschool. If we had to pick a style, I would say that we are unschoolers. What that means for us is that there is no typical day because our days are never routine. What is consistent, though, is that each day the kids take a lead role in their learning experience. We do a lot of hands-on activities, and we engage in the community instead of just strictly learning by textbook or video. I'll give you an example of a project that they led because we are very project-oriented in our homeschool. The kids wanted to learn more about how the government works. We went down to our state capitol where they were able to watch a legislative session. From there, they wanted to learn more. We set up an interview with our local senator who answered a ton of questions for them, and that sparked a project that we did for the remainder of our school year last year. They did an interview project where they would talk to different people in a variety of career fields. They interviewed architects, CEOs, meteorologists, chiropractors, chemists, all sorts of people learning about what they did in their jobs each day. From that project, the kids learned a lot about time management, proper grammar, how to conduct interviews, public speaking, and gained a lot of confidence talking to a variety of people. Did I mention that they were in 5th grade and kindergarten when they did that project? So we are very impressed what we saw when we allowed the kids to take the lead. We don't spend a lot of time at home in our homeschool. A majority of our learning takes place outside of our home. It's not uncommon for us to wake up early in the morning, get in a car, and drive to a new city or state just so that we can learn about the history of that place, the landmarks, the food, the culture. We engage ourselves there. We take walks, we take pictures, we document in our journal, and we compare and contrast the places we visit to where we live currently. We do use curriculum in our homeschool, but we use it very loosely and we tailor it to fit our needs. At the start of the school year, I look through the concepts and try to incorporate them into our homeschool. And believe it or not, even though we don't follow each page verbatim, we hit a lot of the major concepts throughout the school year. We don't do a lot of testing in our homeschool, but there is a way that I can gauge if my children really understand something. If we're practicing a concept like long division or multiplication, the way that I can gauge understanding is if they can explain it to 3 different types of people: someone younger than them, a peer, and an adult. If they can do that, we're golden and we move on. So we don't do a lot of testing in our homeschool. We play a lot of games because I feel that even when the kids are playing, they are learning. We do lots of puzzles, lots of constructing things. We love the arts, so we're at all of the local concerts and plays that the community hosts. The kids love to read, and I allow them the opportunity to choose what they read. I believe that's the way that they develop a love of reading, so we'll continue that in our homeschool. Can unschooling work for your family? I think it can work for all families. I think the difference between traditional homeschooling and unschooling is just that the kids take a more active role in homeschooling, in their homeschooling experience. They tell you what works for them, if they need to slow down, if they need to speed up, basically what they need to have the best homeschool experience ever. For enrichment, that's where our kids really take the lead. They choose the activities that they want to participate outside of academics. This year, they'll be doing American Sign Language, astronomy, entrepreneurship, and community engagement. For entrepreneurship, they'll be partnering with local business owners to learn what it takes to set up and run a successful business. In addition to that, for community service, we're developing a heart of service. So each month, the kids will work on a different project that they will implement and they will carry out throughout the entire school year that will positively impact our community. We started a blog last year called goingforthegoldenlife.com where we highlight some of the things that we're doing in our homeschool. If you want to find out what shenanigans we're going to get into this year, please check us out. Again, it's goingforthegoldenlife.com. I hope that you have a very successful, wonderful school year this year, and always remember to stay golden. Take care, y'all. Bye-bye.
Hi there, my name is Casey, and today I am here to visit with you a little bit about the unit study style of homeschool. Before I start, I would just like to thank those who are responsible for putting this seminar together, as well as allowing me to be part of it. So a little bit about me and my family. We live in Colorado, and we are blessed to be able to homeschool our 2 boys, ages 13 and 15. My oldest has actually gone back to public school for high school this year and has made that transition pretty well. But anyway, we really enjoyed unit studies as part of our school, especially when my boys were younger. So first of all, what are unit studies? Basically, unit studies are also known as thematic studies. So it's a collection of activities that all focus on one theme. And those topics can be absolutely endless. It can be anything from trees to cars, horses, volcanoes, electricity, you name it. If your child is interested, you can create a unit study around that topic. So when you find a topic that your child is interested in or your children are interested in, then what you're going to do with a unit study is you're going to bring all of the disciplines into that topic. So for example, if you have decided to do a unit study on horses, then everything that you do is going to revolve around horses. Okay, you're going to bring in science. You can do like a vet science part of your horse class. You're going to bring in art where they can draw pictures of horses. You're going to bring in history. You're going to bring in, you can even bring in civics and economics. You're going to bring in language arts. And again, any discipline that you are using, that you're focusing on, you can bring it into that theme. So who do unit studies work for? Basically, they work for anyone. We found it very helpful when you're homeschooling multiple ages of students. It's really great because what you can do is you can have one child pick a topic and then all of the children are learning about that same thing, and then you just differentiate the lessons depending on the age level that they are at. So, but you can go on, that way you can go on field trips together, you can take trips to the library, and you're all looking toward kind of the same theme and looking for books and activities that are all the same. So instead of having to do, let's say you have 3 children, instead of having to do 3 different things for art, they're all working on the same theme of art project. Unit studies are also great for children who tend to kind of perseverate on a topic. So I know, like I say, I'm a boy mom, and so I know that sometimes they can tend to get on a topic and then it's really hard to get them off. I'm thinking like that 5, 6, 7-year-old age, when many boys are into things like cars or dinosaurs, and they just can't get that off their mind. So instead of trying to work against that, you're going to work with that, and then they're going to learn everything they possibly can about that subject. One of the other things that we really love about unit studies is you get really in depth. With a lot of curriculum, you're just kind of touching the surface on many different subjects, but with unit studies, you have a chance to take a really deep dive into one subject, and you get a ton of information, and you can almost come out at like an expertise level in that one subject. So a few tips on how to implement unit studies into your homeschool planning is the first thing you're going to want to do is figure out how long you're going to take on a subject. And this might take a little bit of experimentation. So you might want to get into, if you've never done unit studies before, you might want to get into a subject and just kind of see how it plays out. If it's a month, if it's 2 weeks, it kind of just depends on your kids and your timing and what you want it to look like, how in depth you want to get. But you're going to, after you get through that first 1 or 2 units, then you're going to want to kind of sit down and plan out your year and figure out how many you want to do in 1 year. And it doesn't have to be all unit studies. For us, this was kind of more a part of an eclectic homeschool plan where we did some unit studies, we have done some online stuff, we've done some book things. So for us, we're more that eclectic style where we kind of pulled everything together, and unit studies were a part of that. So that's one tip, is to just make sure that you're very well planned out so that you know how far you're going to be able to get through the year. Another thing is, if you are homeschooling multiple children of multiple ages, let them take turns picking the subject. And not only does that gives them a little ownership of that, and you can also let them almost take the lead that way, especially older kids. If an older child is choosing the subject, then they can really kind of help with the younger kids, and you can grow that brotherly, sisterly bond and have them all working together on certain projects, and that makes it really fun as well. The other thing is they can learn from each other that way. And we all know as homeschool parents that that's one of the beautiful things about homeschool, is they're learning from each other all of the time anyway. So the other tip I have is just to use as many free resources as you possibly can. The library is great for resources for unit studies. If you need to get manipulatives or things for art projects, you can often find those at yard sales and at thrift shops, as well as cheap online things from eBay and things like that. So there's really two ways you can go about creating a unit study. There are pre-made unit studies online, and unfortunately I can't recommend any of those because we didn't ever really use pre-made unit studies, but I know that if you just go to the internet and do a search about homeschool unit studies, you're going to come up with tons of resources. Many of them are free. Some of them are whole curriculums for a whole year that are based on unit studies. But it's just going to take a little bit of searching on your part and see if you want to do a pre-made unit study. The second way you can go about it is just to kind of bring activities and things together on your own. And that's kind of more what we did when we did unit studies. We live on a ranch, and so our lifestyle really lends itself well to that. So in the spring, when we really started getting busy outside with our animals and stuff, we would just kind of bring all of those things into what we were already doing on the ranch with our sheep and with our cattle. And I probably have to say that most of the time my kids probably didn't even realize that they were in school, because unit studies have kind of a very organic learning. It's kind of a learning by doing and immersion. So that's kind of how we ran our unit studies. Now, when you get to the end, you're going to want to have some sort of way to figure out if they have mastered some skills in that. And that can be a final paper, it can be a report, it can be one of your hands-on, like an art project, building a diorama. Whatever that mastery skill looks like for you, that's what you can do for wrapping up your unit study. So let's talk about some of the pros of using unit studies as part of your homeschool curriculum. So I've already mentioned that unit studies are great for getting a really in-depth understanding of a subject. In fact, there are studies that show that children who engage in unit studies have a 45% greater retention rate on that subject than other methods. So that's a really great positive. We've mentioned that you can use unit studies across multiple ages with multiple children, and it's very conducive to field trips. But some other great things about unit studies are that it really enhances children's creativity and their critical thinking as well. And sometimes for the people that are putting together the curriculum, it makes you get pretty creative too, because you're trying to bring all of those academic things into one subject. Okay, some of the cons about using unit studies is I had mentioned before that math can be kind of difficult, especially when you get into the older ages. It can be difficult to work math in. So when you get up toward like the middle school age, when they're starting to learn algebra and things like that, it can be challenging to bring math in. So that might just have to be a separate thing. And that's okay. You can always do one or two subjects that are separate from your actual unit study. Another con is it does take some organization ahead of time. So even though it's simple as you're playing it out, it takes a lot of organization and gathering materials before you actually start that unit study. And then unit studies are probably not great for the people that really love a very structured curriculum. It's a little bit more kind of fly by your seat type of curriculum. So if you're somebody who is very structured, this might not be the best for you. Also, if you're somebody who relies heavily on meeting certain benchmarks at certain ages, then unit studies might not be the best for you, because what you're going to find is, especially in a standardized test, students aren't going to have that surface understanding of a multitude of subjects. Like I said before, they're going to have a really deep understanding of a few subjects. So if you're trying to hit certain benchmarks for certain ages at on certain subjects, unit studies might not be the best for you. I hope that this helped you learn a little bit more about unit studies and how you might be able to incorporate them into your homeschool curriculum. If you want to take a little gander at my blog, you can find me at www.wholesomecountryhome.com. On my blog, I talk about our life here on a ranch in Colorado, raising cattle and sheep, but I also focus a lot on just living a natural life, being naturally healthy, as well as I have recipes for cleaning supplies and home remedies, all kinds of fun stuff on there, as well as some homeschool blogging as well. So wholesomecountryhome.com, you can also find me the same way on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. I hope you enjoyed and have a blessed day. Thanks.
Hello, I am Justina from Just Classical. and today I would like to tell you about classical education. What is classical education? Classical education is based on the trivium, which means 3 roads or the 3 stages of education. The first stage is the grammar stage or knowledge stage. This is the early years of a child's development and learning. This is ages 3 to 11. Elementary schools used to be called grammar schools because of this developmental stage. Grammar is the basic vocabulary of a subject or discipline. During the grammar stage, a child will gather information, observe, categorize, and ask who, what, when, and where. This is a time to memorize and drill those memory facts as the foundation to the rest of the learning process. For memorization and repetition are the way children learn. The second stage of the trivium is the dialectic or understanding stage. This occurs during the middle school years at approximately ages 12 to 14, but can begin earlier depending on the child. Here, a child will ask questions on how and why the logic of the vocabulary acquired in the grammar stage. The child will reason, evaluate, compare, criticize, discuss, and debate. It is time to learn discernment and reconcile ideas while building relationships. It may feel like a child is seeking to argue about everything, and this is why the teenage years can be so difficult, but this is just part of development. Then there is the third stage, which is called the rhetoric stage or wisdom. This usually occurs in the high school years, ages 14 to 18. This is the time when a young adult will synthesize and defend ideas and be able to use and apply his or her learning. He or she will express his or her ideas creatively or persuade through written papers or speeches and is able to teach others. The goal is to become men and women. Using a few analogies, the grammar stage is like putting down the dots of a dot to dot, while the dialectic stage would be connecting the lines. Finally, you can see the big picture in the rhetoric stage. Or, using a computer analogy, the grammar stage is the input, the dialectic stage is the process and practice, and the rhetoric stage is the output. While these are stages of cognitive development, they are also natural stages of learning. Even in adult learning, a new discipline will follow these steps. Allowing children to go through these 3 stages, grammar, dialectic, and rhetoric, or knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, is the natural process of learning, which is proven over time. It is not a modern creation of a think tank group, but it is a recognition of the way God causes a child to develop and a child's propensity to learn. While in today's progressive education, as envisioned by Dewey, children are being asked to be creative and discuss ideas before they have any vocabulary of the subject. Classical education gives children tools to learn by putting the horse, memorization of facts and vocabulary, before the cart, asking questions and discussion of ideas, and ultimately application. The beauty of classical education is that children learn how to think, not what to think. Let's face it, the government schools have a psychosocial agenda to push and are pressuring our children to regurgitate certain politically correct material as if this is real critical thinking. Only one side of an issue is presented, so children do not learn to ask questions and arrive at a well thought out conclusion, but they are told what to think, to fit in and become part of the collective. Classical education, on the other hand, empowers children to take charge of their learning, and in the rhetoric or wisdom stage, young adults can have meaningful discussions about issues with research on both sides of the issue presented, so they can come to a logical and well thought out position. In classical education, because things are in their proper order, laying the foundation of knowledge, asking questions, and assimilating information for understanding and writing, discussing, and defending ideas, and teaching others to the end of application and wisdom, children love to learn, discover how to learn, and ultimately become true lifelong learners, not puppets who merely repeat state-approved ideology. In classical education, because of the 3 stages, learning is layered and the child does not have to retain all of the information, understanding, and application at once. Also, in classical education, integration of subjects is important. In fact, it would be better to label school subjects as disciplines or categories of creation, and all of the disciplines should and can be integrated and related back to God. How does science relate to history and literature? How has God worked his will throughout history? See how Alexander the Great brought the Greek language to much of the world so the time would be right for Christ to be born and spread his message throughout the world? See how math is structured to show us we have a God of structure? And parsing and diagramming sentences for English is also structured and logical like math. We can relate all of the learning disciplines to one another and to God. Group work, a tenet of progressive education, is back in vogue in public schools, but it is based on sharing ignorance due to the lack of grammar and involves coming to a prearranged conclusion using peer pressure and teacher facilitation. Usually one student does all the work, and the other students who don't care coast along on the work of the one who does care. In classical education, dialectic discussion and rhetorical expression do require a group to work with, but it is nothing like group work. Instead, classical education provides community, a safe place to discuss ideas and challenge one another so one can develop convictions, even if they are not the popular agenda of the day. I'd rather see my children become men and women who stand for ideas they can defend than remain infants who are tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching and by the cunning and craftiness of people in their deceitful scheming. They need community to develop these ideas, though, and a classical Christian community like Classical Conversations is a wonderful place to do this. Veritas Press, Memoria Press, Circe Institute, Claritas, and True North Homeschool Academy are other quality classical curriculum. So, we educate our children classically because it is the usual course of development and provides children with the tools necessary to discover, explore, and use their God-given gifts. Classical education makes sense as it sets our children up for success in learning any discipline they desire to pursue. With a strong foundation of knowledge, they can ask questions, discuss, debate, synthesize, and eventually reach mastery and wisdom. They are enabled to become responsible adults and to glorify and enjoy God, which is the chief end of man. As I said at the beginning, I am Justina from Just Classical. My business supports homeschool moms with encouragement and those who educate classically with songs and videos to help memorize things, as well as videos of artist biographies and composer biographies, and to help teach drawing and music. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube, and my website at justclassical.com. You may also be interested in my course, How to Thrive, Not Just Survive as a Homeschool Mom, available on Teachable. Thank you for learning about classical education with me today.
Hi there, my name is Megan Jackson, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Waldorf education. Now, I'm not sure what you've heard about Waldorf education, so let me give you a brief overview. Waldorf education was invented by Rudolf Steiner. He also had some thoughts on anthroposophy and other types of things which are not taught in the Waldorf education. So for those of you who are concerned about that, it doesn't have much of a crossover. Waldorf, what drew our family to Waldorf education was that it is a whole child approach. In the younger years, academics is actually delayed until approximately 6 or 7 years old. before that, whole families are encouraged to have a strong rhythm and flow to their day. A lot of outdoor time and natural materials as well. So that really worked well for our family, encouraging story time, baking, having the kids involved in family life. When the children start doing grades 1 and up, then you're looking at more teacher-directed learning. So what I mean by a whole child approach is that you are involving the head, the hands, and the heart. And they call that thinking, feeling, and doing. So not only are you learning about the material, but you're also doing a lot of hands-on material and activities and thinking about it and really taking it to heart. It's a lot of story-based, and they also place great importance on handicrafts and arts, as well as the more academic subjects like maths and sciences. So that really appeals to families who want to place an equal importance to all subjects. The other thing that's special about Waldorf education is that a lot of thought went into when certain subjects are introduced to your children. And it aligns with what you notice about changes that they are going through in their development. So for example, when a child is reaching around 9 years old and they're looking for more independence from their family, from their parents, and they're starting to come into who they are as a person, that's also when they're learning about what the Israelites are doing in the Old Testament of the Bible and how they were separating themselves and doing things like that. Then you learn a lot about ancient civilizations, your past, and where they came from around times when children would be exploring those things in their own personal life. So for me, I really like that so much thought went into what subjects to include in what grades. And that also goes for the sciences. For botany is in grade 5. And in grade 4, you're looking at the connection between man and animals and doing a whole lot of exploring in zoology and everything. Now, for those of you who are wondering if Waldorf is a religious curriculum, that depends on your family's take on it. It is not specific to any one religion, but they do encourage you to have some type of spirituality to, again, include the whole person, so that you're including like whatever spirit or whatever religion you happen to ascribe to. And if you don't have one, then you just don't include those type of elements. So you can think of it more as poems rather than verses. So you can adapt the curriculum to what works for your family and what your beliefs are. Now, the way that Waldorf works is that they do block scheduling. So rather than doing a little bit of many different subjects every day, you would focus more on one subject for, say, 4 to 6 weeks. Now, you can include other things like daily math practice as well. But for example, you're going to be doing 4 to 6 weeks on maybe botany, or 4 to 6 weeks on short stories or fairy tales, which comes up in grade 1. Now, for those of you in grade 1, then what they would do is that the kindergarten curriculum, if you find it, is mostly fairy tales and story based. Then you would be introducing the alphabet actually closer to grade 1 through stories, through fairy tales, and then a lot of drawing and artistic expression. And the handwriting and everything is they use form drawing, which is fantastic. It's like those pre-writing exercises. It really worked well. They do that through several different grades so that you're working on the shape of the letters rather than just focusing on the letters themselves. And that gets your children to work on their fine motor skills. and then be able to incorporate that into the handwriting. So Waldorf is perfect for families who really want to go at their children's pace and to not push academics way into the younger grades, to allow them to develop their fine motor, their gross motor. And if you really enjoy stories and storytelling, this is great for you. Another thing that is wonderful about Waldorf is, again, for my family, what connected us was the importance of handicrafts. Now, if you don't know them, that's okay. You can learn right along with your children, but they do a lot of knitting, needle felting, finger knitting, painting, that type of thing, and it's a lot of fun. So as you get higher into the grades, you're adding more and more subjects in. So you would start with, instead of throwing every academic subject on at once, you do that as they get older, and then in the end, you're still coming out the same as everybody else. I also wanted to take a minute to address how you would do Waldorf with multiple children in your family. That's a concern for many families. You have two options with that. One option would be to do separate curriculum, separate lesson plans for each children. A lot of parents look at crossover subjects and where certain stories could be combined. So if one child was doing animals and one was doing something else, you could have a story that could address both, and then they can go off and do some more towards that. So you could try to do one, like, separate main lessons for each child throughout the day. Some people thrive with that, and some people find that overwhelming. So another option would be to combine as many things as you can, because being in a home and with your family is much different than being in school. And so it's okay if they are hearing a story from an older grade if they're a younger child, and then even if they repeat that, there's nothing wrong with that. So you could do one child's story and the others are hearing it. You could also, everybody could do math at the same time, and some could be review, some it could be new topics. So if you're doing blocks, a lot of families try to combine as much as possible, or they split up instruction times so that one is doing some independent reading while mom is doing or whatever parent is doing the main lesson with one child. So there is some flexibility within that. And again, I look for connection points between what the family could all be doing at the same time. So everyone could be doing art at the same time. You just might all be doing different pictures. Everyone could be doing music or movement at the same time. You're just doing what works for you at each level. If you have any questions about Waldorf, I'd be more than happy to help you. I blog at joyfulmudpuddles.com, and you can go under resources and my blog tab is there. I'm also a homeschooling coach. Some of the major popular curriculums for Waldorf is Christophorus, Live Ed, Earth Schooling, and Waldorf Essentials. There are a wide range of price ranges too, depending on if you want open and go or a little more flexibility with that. We Folk Arts and Lavender Blue are also some of the curriculums that are available. So I hope this video helps you just get a small idea of what Waldorf is.
Okay, hey everybody, my name is Sarah and I am known in the homeschool world as Online School Mom. That's my blog, onlineschoolmom.com. So before you hit close and you move on to another video because you're hearing online school and you're thinking about Corona style online school, I'm just gonna stay up front. That's not anything like the online school that we've done. The e-learning and the online school with COVID is completely different. I think it was kind of thrown together by most schools. I know people did the best they could. Educators really tried to pull things together for both public school and private school students, but it's not as painful as what you heard in those times. And if you were one of those parents, I promise it doesn't have to be that way. So hopefully you'll keep listening. So our style of homeschool has been this way we're going on 7 years. So I have 3 kids, and my older 2 are now 14 and 16, and they have been homeschooled or online schooled since they were going into 3rd and 4th grade. So now they're going into 9th and 10th. So we've survived 6 years of this. I am a full-time working mom in the corporate world, and I travel quite a bit for my job. At least I did before COVID. So that will resume. Then I have a 3rd kiddo who was actually really happy in public school, but her being home with me the last couple of months has really shown that I'm going to keep her home too. So it hasn't always been easy as a working mom, I can tell you that right now, but I think I offer a unique perspective to prospective homeschooling moms. So you can do it. It's not easy, but you definitely can do it. So what I thought I would share is a little bit about our homeschool and how we do it and the different kinds of online school as I know it. So again, I've got 3 kids, I've got 2 dogs, I've got a golden doodle and a Maltipoo. And we predominantly do online schooling, and we take the route that we've used a variety of different things. I'll go through that as I talk, but we do make sure, because my kids are in high school, they're both prospective student athletes, which by the NCAA means that they want to compete as athletes in college. Sorry, so their high school curriculum has to be NCAA approved. So we have a little bit of a different twist that we have to make sure we meet as well. So as far as the 4 different kinds of online school, I thought I would go over those. The first one is online public school. So that's not really homeschool. It's doing public school, but at home. So that's what you might see commercials about, especially before the open enrollment period. It's K-12 and Connections Academy are the most common. Then you'll hear about some others too that are owned by the state and state run. So I know Texas has some of their own. Here in Iowa, we just have Connections and K-12. About those, again, they're public school at home. You have to follow the guidelines. A lot of times there are live online sessions that you have to attend that are mandatory. And if you're thinking about that for elementary, we did it for a year, and I can tell you it's a lot of involvement as a parent. They call it the learning coach. But as a parent, there's a lot that you have to help elementary students with. I think it gets better with junior high and high school, but it's definitely not just a put your kid in front of the computer and let them go type curriculum. So that's number 1, online public school. Number 2 is what I personally call an online all-in-one curriculum without live classes. So this is, I'm gonna give some examples. You might have, if you've been looking into this at all. Time for Learning would be one of these. Easy Peasy, Power Homeschool, Khan Academy, Study.com. Those are all computer-based curriculum. Sometimes they'll have a video of, by a teacher. Sometimes it'll be more just a recording, kind of like a robotic type thing, but it's a thing where a kid can log in anytime they want and work through the different modules, complete quizzes, complete tests, complete exams. And it's just, it's pretty flexible. I think with this, it's usually a monthly cost. And you can look into it. If I was going to do this, I would make sure I talked to somebody that was doing the same grade with some of the same educational goals as you have, so that you can see if that's right for your kid and for your family. We did one of these for a brief time with my 3rd grader who, like I said, she was in public school, and then with the transition, we tried one of these just briefly for the 2 months. She would log on every day, and it was more just to make sure we got our core stuff fulfilled. So a lot of times you have to supplement with these, so just be aware of that as well. But it's definitely an option, especially if you're new to homeschool and you're looking for something that you can just open up and they can go. And they don't want a live component and you want it to be really flexible. It's an option. Okay, number 3. So these are your all-in-one providers that don't have a live component, or they may have live component, both. Okay, this I consider number 3 to be private online school. So it's like a private school but online. Some examples of this: Liberty Academy. I think it's Liberty University, maybe. It might not be Academy. Laurel Springs, Alpha Omega, Stanford University High School. I know Bridgewater has one. There's several more. It seems like there's more of these popping up every day. So this is, again, like a private school. These are usually pretty expensive, but it's all your curriculum in one thing. A lot of times there will be an online component. I think I said that already, so forgive me. Not always. I think the time to complete the student's work and their grade level definitely differs. Some of these offer honors options or AP options, so that might be something of interest. But again, I would I would try to find out another person that, again, has the same educational goals, or no one's ever gonna have the same, but similar educational goals and same grade level, and ask them, like, what's the workload like? What's a typical week look like? How much time do they spend on each subject? Are there electives? These are all questions to ask, and I do have a lot of these things on my blog too, so don't feel like you have to take notes, because I got all kinds of nifty stuff on there. Some of these have clubs, so they can kind of have like a social aspect to them, but they're definitely an option. But again, they're usually pretty expensive, so that's option number 3. So we've got number 1 was public online. Number 2 was an all-in-one, like I call it an electronic curriculum, and then number 3 is more like private school at home. And then moving on to number 4, this is actually what we presently do with my 14-year-old and he just turned 16. So they're gonna be in 9th and 10th grade. And we've done this the last couple of years. So what we do is what I call, and I think most of the providers call it this, a la carte, online classes, and then we piece them together. So I pick basically, what do I want them to take for math? It might be one provider. What do I want them to take for language arts? It might be a different online provider. It sounds complicated, I promise it's not. For science, who are we gonna take it from? And then I take that, usually they have one live class a week online, and usually they're an hour and a half, so it's like more intense, longer classes, and then the other days they'll get assignments. So for biology, they'll have a 90-minute class. Let's say my son had it on Thursdays, and then the other days he might have worksheets, he'll have reading, he'll have questions, just like you would have for a typical homeschool curriculum. A lot of times they'll have this particular class sent us a whole lab kit, and he dissected it home. He did different experiments and whatnot, had to write lab reports. So that was all with the class, but they're basically, you pay that provider. That's your teacher. She or he does the grading. That's who you submit your assignments to. So as a parent, you're a lot more hands off. You have to do a lot of the scheduling up front. You need to make sure that you pick good providers, but then after the fact, then they can do a lot of their stuff on their own. That's even for 3rd grade. I put my 3rd grader, who, like I said, she was in public school. She tried a couple of these. She's doing a history class and she's doing a grammar class. So she has a 90-minute live class once a week, and then she's got home, little assignments the other days. And we prefer this option because my kids like the interaction. We like the accountability. You can watch the recordings. And just again, I work full time, so I can't teach all 3 kids everything. So it's a great option for us. It would also be a good option if you had a class that you didn't necessarily want to teach, and you were doing more of a traditional homeschool curriculum and you wanted to just piece out one class. So that would be another option. I guess before signing up, just a couple additional suggestions. See if there's a trial period. You can try it out and see if it works for your family. For live online classes, don't do a ton of them in a day or your kids will go nuts in front of the computer. Just maybe one a day. And then I would suggest a class on Outschool. You can do one class. It costs about $10 and try it. See if they like the live online version or not. And you can check out my blog. Again, it's onlineschoolmom.com. And then I have a private Facebook group that's just about all things online school. So I appreciate the opportunity and I look forward to meeting you guys in person online. Thanks.
Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Notcan and I'm here to talk to you guys about eclectic homeschooling. So what is eclectic homeschooling? It's kind of simple. It's a fancy way of saying highly individualized learning method that matches different styles of learning materials for your specific learner. So this could be that you choose one curriculum for math and a different curriculum for English. Some people really like using Charlotte Mason's method of teaching English, while other people don't even use a curriculum for science. They prefer a more hands-on approach. So this is what we use in our house. I have 2 kids, 5 and 8, and they're both very, very different. So you can imagine I was a little stressed out when I was trying to figure out exactly what kind of curriculum or methods to use when starting my homeschooling journey. I found Eclectic to be the best choice for us because I could find all different kinds of resources that best fit each of my kids. Seeing as I have a rising kindergartner and a rising third grader, there's two very big different learning material for both of them. However, with Eclectic, I was able to combine both of their learning and make it to where I could teach my third grader but modify it for my kindergartner. So we use this, and we don't have set schedules or even a set curriculum. I pull from our state standards just to kind of get an idea of what the government kind of thinks we're supposed to learn. I base all of our stuff kind of loosely on those, but I use them just as a good guiding point. I have a few resources here to show you guys of just kind of how we do our eclectic homeschooling. For instance, for social studies, we get these cool letters in the mail every month from a subscription. And every month, the character actually visits a new country and introduces us to maybe a specific city or landmark in that country. So what we do is we read the narrative and then we explore about it. This might mean looking it up on the map or looking up on Google Earth. My kids love Google Earth. Or we'll read folk tales from that place. Last month was Ireland, so we spent an entire month reading different myths, legends, and folklores in the Irish culture. We even made some really cool Irish recipes and stuff. We made porridge, which my kids didn't end up liking as much as I thought. But it was really fun, and we wouldn't really get to find that in a curriculum that someone else made for us. So that's just one of the ways that Eclectic was really useful for us. We also do a lot of stories. A lot of our subjects are intertwined with each other because why not? So a lot of the things that we do for one subject kind of pertains to another. For social studies, we also like to learn about different people. So we have the Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls and Stories for Boys Who Dare to Be Different. So not only are we reading, I'm reading aloud to them, or my son will read it to us, and we're learning about, the different biographies of different people. So for example, if we were reading about Amelia Earhart, for instance, that gives us a really great point to jump off on whatever we kind of feel like doing that day. So we learned about Amelia's biography, learned a little bit about her background, her childhood, and things like that. And then that jump-started us to, how do airplanes work? How do communication systems work? Because obviously they didn't have a very good system back then, or she wouldn't have gone missing. So it's really great, and it empowers both of my kids to kind of dare to be different, which is something I really appreciate. And in social studies, since we have a big focus on our maps and our globe and stuff like that, we like to learn about the different cultures around the world. So this is just an example of one of the books that we have, Throw Your Tooth on the Roof, Traditions Around the World. So it's just a cute little story about how different cultures do different things when a child loses their tooth. It just really helps expose my kids to the different cultures. And when we're done reading or learning about a place, we kind of just choose whatever resource or activity we really want to do to kind of show our learning. So my kids really like making booklets. They love making their own textbooks. But really I think it's just they like using the scissors and the stapler. So they will read and they'll learn and we'll do lots of research and they'll draw and color and put all of their learning in one space, and then they present it to us at the end of the day. So it's just a really fun way for them to do a lot of different things, and they're still focusing on that one subject. So that was for social studies. Every morning, we have a kind of our version of a morning basket. We call it our school bucket. And basically it just has some notebooks and things they're using, reading, writing, and spelling and things like that. And essentially all I do is I look up third grade spelling list, and I kind of go from there. We introduce the words, we use them in our manipulatives, or we'll write sentences. My son learned how to actually use a dictionary, both a book and using the internet to find definitions, just by being exposed to the spelling words. So he gets to work with a lot of different words that way. And then for our science notebook, we actually have kind of a different version of an interactive notebook a little bit. You know, he'll take notes and he'll do his drawings. And it's just a really good way for him to kind of put down his thoughts, and it's not a spelled out worksheet for us. And we use, again, nature observation is our biggest thing here, but we love our resource books. Again, with Eclectic Homeschooling, you're able to pull from so many different kinds of resources that your possibilities are endless. These are just a few of our favorites, or my kids' favorites. You know, we love the planet Earth, and the pictures are beautiful, and it's not necessarily the easiest for them to read on their own, but it is visually stimulating. So, and it's broken down really nicely for us. So my kids are able to kind of organize their thoughts based on the pages in the book. So it's really nice. We love, love, love all of Julia Rothman's books. Again, this is just a simple little book that she did to showcase her artwork, and yet we were able to use it as eclectic homeschoolers. You know, it's beautiful. It has some facts in it. It's not as deep as you might want, but again, with eclectic homeschooling, when you're using these different resources, a lot of times I find that it's just a good starting point, and we kind of take off from there. I do a little bit of child-led learning with my kids. They are very much strong-willed children, so when we get into the topic of, let's say, shorebirds, you know, maybe my son really likes the roseate spoonbill, my daughter really likes the glossy ibis. So they both kind of go off onto their own, and we find more information about those two specific birds. So it's really nice because neither one of my kids has to stick with one thing, and they can kind of bounce and bounce and bounce. Our only house rule is once you start something, you do have to finish it. And with science, I found that the best way to integrate our art and learning how to draw or paint or appreciation was to use those books when we did our painting or our artwork in general. So my kids really enjoy watercoloring, and they're able to practice with different colors and mixtures. And again, I didn't use a curriculum for this. In fact, we just opened up the book, learned about some jellyfish, and we went with it. So it was really easy, really simple, and eclectic. For reading, I know a lot of parents really stress about teaching their kids to read, but it's not that hard. Especially as an eclectic homeschooler, you're able to choose, again, from multiple resources, but also different materials to use. One of my favorites is something I found on Amazon. A couple of letters that are, you know, nice wood, and they're really durable. So my daughter works with the words. We practice reading. You know, we've got all kinds of different books that we use that are visually beautiful, and we read over and over again. We practice sight words. We do all kinds of things. But because we're eclectic, I didn't feel like I had to teach her how to read. I waited for her to tell me, Mommy, I want to learn how to read. So with that, you're able to choose and be really specific with each of your kids. For instance, my son hates writing, but I do feel like it's an important skill. So I actually taught him how to type on a keyboard before really pushing writing. And he's able to get his thoughts across a lot easier. Now, with some curriculum or very specific methods, that may not have been a choice. So it's really great for families who have very different kids, and I definitely recommend Eclectic for anyone who has a strong-willed child, because you're able to be more individualized for your kid. If you've got a constant mover, you can do things while they're moving and doing jumping jacks or running around the yard. If you've got an introvert, then you can do a lot of, you know, individual studies that only require maybe 2 people at a time. Or maybe you have an older kid and you really want them to explore, you know, job careers and different skills like that. Well, that's something that you can find and kind of let them go off and do their own thing. And, you know, for the younger kids, eclectic homeschooling is definitely beneficial because you don't have to start them that young. Start them when they're ready. But, you know, for a lot of stimulation and just trying to get them to play and learn all at the same time, we have a lot of like open-ended toys like scarves and peg dolls and stuff like that. And it's really helpful. Any family who's looking for a good homeschooling method would definitely need to consider Eclectic. And it is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It takes some getting used to because no one's telling you, hey, this is what you need to do. So if you're needing something that's very specific and lays out word for word, step by step, what you need to teach your child, Eclectic might not be for you. But if you're really wanting to have more freedom or let your child have some say-so in their education, Eclectic is definitely a good spot to start because possibilities are endless. And I talk a lot about this over on my website, eclecticlearners.com. It's just basically a good place for people who are looking for more information on eclectic learning and lifestyle, actually, because let's be serious, we're all a bunch of mixed match people. So I hope that this helps all of you newbies and even veterans who are trying to figure out maybe a different method for their students. And have a great day.
Hi, my name is Mina Humphreys, and I am an eclectic homeschooler to 2 boys, currently aged 8 and 6. So eclectic homeschooling is just a melting pot of all the homeschool styles and philosophies put together. What I love about eclectic homeschooling is I'm forever researching as a homeschool mom, and I just love all the different types of curriculum and philosophy out there, so I could never really narrow in on my approach. And then also, as a homeschool mom and seeing how my children learn, as we've kind of been on this journey for the last few years, having to be flexible with what I want as a homeschool mom may not actually be what's best for my children and how they learn. And so we really try to follow more of a Charlotte Mason-based approach. We have a lot of living literature in our home. We spend our days reading a lot. And so we actually read more than Charlotte Mason philosophy would say, where Charlotte Mason would kind of more follow, a chapter at this age and then dictate out that chapter. Sometimes we'll read an entire chapter book in one afternoon just because we absolutely love the book and we can't wait to finish. We kind of take a approach for our math of more of a traditional approach. And we follow a copywork for our language arts, and then a really simple phonics program that we do daily. And then we're also a Suzuki piano family. So if you're not familiar with Suzuki, it is a method that teaches children how to play an instrument by ear before reading. So kind of the same principle surrounding it is that a child learns to talk before he learns to actually read and write. Same thing with music. Children in their developmental stages as a young child, a Suzuki family would start anywhere from age 3 to 7 is kind of the cutoff time. They learn how to play the instrument based on hearing before they're actually then introduced to the piece of music on paper. So really just a whole mesh of a whole bunch of things. That's why we're eclectic. And I'm just really, me naturally as a person, is very eclectic in style. So it really works for my family. And one thing that has helped me on my homeschool journey is to realize that sometimes less is actually more. So that's kind of one of the dangers I feel of eclectic style, is that typically those of us who go towards that route, we're the researchers that never stop researching. And we want to, we just fall in love with all the beautiful books and curriculum out there. I mean, we are really at a spot in history where there's never been a better opportunity to homeschool. Like, you can find anything out there. And it's hard to say no sometimes, but you have to look at, what are we using? Is this really going to add to our day, or is it actually going to take away because it's just too much? And so we're very literature based. That's kind of my spine for everything is, can we read this book? Is it, nurturing our souls and putting in really character habits and development, and just going from there. So we don't necessarily have a quote unquote certain curriculum that we follow at the moment. I started out using Bookshark and Sunlight. And then I moved into more of just like that Charlotte Mason kind of Ambleside online. I used them. And then I've also used different individual like phonics programs, reading programs. I've honestly bought almost like all of the phonics programs on market because my older son has just been more of a reluctant reader and used so many things. For our math, we use Right Start Math. And this next year, I'm kind of going to be just meshing in what we have. And with my younger one, I'm going to be using Moving Beyond the Page as the spine. And so really like at the base of our eclectic homeschooling, literature-based, and then pulling in all these other elements such as Suzuki piano, art curriculum. We have lots of art history books where we'll pick, in that Charlotte Mason style, let's work on this hymn and this picture study. And when it comes to doing the nature study part that Charlotte Mason recommends, we don't necessarily do nature study because we live on the big island of Hawaii, off-grid on 2 acres. And so after we're done with our typical lessons for the day, which is normally by lunchtime, sometimes after lunch we'll break. We like to do jungle tea parties, and then we'll read maybe another chapter book in the afternoon or a few chapters to wrap up our day, or do some handicrafts or artwork or crafts. But then other days, my boys are just out free playing, wild and free in the jungle. And they're just constantly surrounded by nature, where we go camping or we go to the beach. So we don't necessarily need to really pick a time where we're going to go and observe nature for a set couple of hours, like some families who maybe live more in suburbia or in a city environment really need to carve that out in their day. My boys are just naturally doing it. So when they come inside, typically from playing out in the yard, I'll say, "Oh, what did you find?" And to me, homeschooling isn't just about educating your child at home. It's not about school at home. Homeschool really, it's a lifestyle. And when you embrace that lifestyle, it's just absolute freedom and joy. And of course, there's trying moments, but it's all good for growth and learning. So that's my little tidbit on eclectic homeschooling. If you can't find a box to fit into, mesh them all together, be a circle. It's okay. You can find me at homeschoolmusings.com, where I actually have a podcast specifically where we talk all about curriculum, philosophy, homeschool life, and a little bit of fun story time thrown in there as well, and interviews with the experts. So come check out homeschoolmusings.com. Happy homeschooling.
Hi, I'm Jen from Jen Dodrell History at Home, and I wanted to talk to you today about the eclectic homeschooling style, and particularly in the middle and upper grades. I didn't start homeschooling until our 3rd son hit middle school, and over the next few years I brought home our 4th child when she hit 6th grade, and then our baby, our 5th child, once she hit 4th grade. So the eclectic method worked really well for me because I was able to tailor it towards how they learned. I think it's very important to figure out your child's learning style and how that works for them. And all 3 of those kids that I brought home had different learning styles. My oldest son that was at home and the baby probably were more similar in their learning styles. And then my 4th child, my daughter, she would have been quite happy with textbooks, and we often did that. She was more of a by-the-book kind of kid, liked worksheets and things like that. So eclectic in middle and high school. What that means is finding out what works for each subject. So for instance, for my son, and I'll use him as my basis, okay, because I homeschooled him from 6th grade through 12th grade. And I found gaps especially in math for him. So we had to try some different things. We used Math UC for middle school on up till, I think it was Algebra 1, and then it kind of hit a roadblock with him, and I'm not good at math, so we switched to teaching textbooks, and that worked well with him. Some of the other things that we used for him were, we used Total Language Plus for English, because Total Language Plus, the student reads a novel And then it's a guide that takes them through grammar, vocab, writing, all those things that they need to do. So it is kind of a complete curriculum, and you have a lot of choice. So I was able to say at the beginning of each year or each semester, what do you want to cover this year? What books do you want to read? He wasn't a real fanatical reader, and so this gave him some choices, and then me still some control to where I could see what he was doing. We also threw in Winston grammar with that to kind of beef up the grammar side. We always did vocabulary. Sometimes we'd use like wordly wise for vocabulary. Apology as Science was the science curriculum that he enjoyed the most. I think all three of my kids used Apologia at one time or other. We also, through the years, especially for the two younger girls, would use Becca or Bob Jones science because, especially for my fourth kid, my middle one that was at home, she didn't love science and she needed kind of that textbook. Like I said before, she was more of a textbook kid, so she really liked that. So Eclectic is a mix of things. It's a mix of learning style. It's a mix of teaching style. You find what works best for each kid. I kind of made some notes to try to help me think of things that might be helpful for you. So how it worked was each year, and sometimes even during the year, I would reevaluate. If something didn't work, one year we tried Singapore math with my middle girl that was home, and I didn't understand it at all, and she didn't understand it either, so we scrapped that one and moved on to Saxon math, which always boggled my mind, but it worked for her, so that's all that mattered. She did fine with that. So it worked well for me because I still had control over what they learned, and I did a lot of research. I used like the Rainbow Resource Catalog. I used Kathy Duffy's Homeschooling, what I call the Homeschooling Bible, where she talks about she has reviews on all the different kinds of homeschooling material there is. So I think for somebody, and I have friends that use Sunlight exclusively or Becca exclusively, and I think for somebody that needs all of that laid out for you, where, and I don't mean this critical at all, but you don't have to think about what your child's going to learn. You just open the book up and it's right there. It's already written for you. Okay. I totally get that. And for people that have multiple children that maybe you're homeschooling all of them. So I added mine kind of slowly back in from public school. So it was a little different for me. So if you're always homeschooling or all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 at home, then something like Sunlight or Becca might be great for you because it has it all laid out. It's not something you have to come up with on your own. Okay. Whereas when we did like Whole Language Plus, I had to say, okay, I want you to read X amount of books, 3 books a semester or whatever, which doesn't sound like much, but when you have a child that's not big on reading, that's a lot for them. And they could look through the study guides and see what they liked. And I knew that those study guides were complete, if that makes sense. So I knew that they were covering what they needed. So for me, the eclectic style worked really well. I think it worked very well for my kids because it gave them an opportunity to try different things. And like I said, everybody learns differently. And I think maybe your underlying learning style doesn't change, but your interests change it as you get older. So it gave them an opportunity to try other things. I would say that for my middle one that was at home that I said likes textbooks, so she liked the eclectic style, but I think sometimes it overwhelmed her. I think that she would have done really well if I had done something like a Becca, which is super thorough, all laid out for you, and she would have just taken off and run with that because she really likes school. She likes that kind of school environment, and the reason I brought her home wasn't necessarily because she wanted to come home, but more because I wanted her home, if that makes sense. So I think that the eclectic style offers so many opportunities for children to learn. And that's what we want. We want them to learn in the style, in the way that they're comfortable with. It's not always the way that you're comfortable with. So, like I said, for that middle one that was at home, I probably should have done something like Sunlight or Abeka where it was all one thing. But I was already in the eclectic style at that point, and it worked well for me. If I had brought her home first, I might have gotten into more of like a textbook curriculum based, you know, all laid out one thing. And that would have been okay, but it probably wouldn't have worked well with my son that I brought home. Now the baby that came home, she's not a baby, she's 18, she just graduated. I graduated all three of those. They graduated from homeschooling and went on to college, so that my youngest one leaves in August for college. But she loved the eclectic style because I think it really gave her choices. So even as all three of them got older, they did dual enrollment at the community college, and that gave them college credit, but it also gave them experience. And anytime you can get them other kinds of learning in there, because if they go to college, it won't always be like Mama did it. And so we want them to try some other things. So my kids all went to, we have a local tutorial here. They all went to that at one time or other and took different things through that. And my youngest did some science classes with lab with one of our homeschool mom friends who loves science. That's her thing. And she loves to teach the small classes and really get in there with the kids and do the lab. So they did do a lot of eclectic style learning, and I think it really benefited them. I know that once they hit college, they were ready. I know that this youngest one, she's ready. Academically, she is ready, and they all were academically, and they did really well. You know, we all worry about standardized testing and all. They all did really well on that, and were able to get some scholarships from their schools for that. So, you know, I hope this covers the eclectic style well for you. I hope it gives you some insight and understanding to it. I do blog at jendodrellhistoryathome.com, and you can find my little ad for that in your grab bag. And I would love to have you visit my website and see what I cover. I cover a lot about high school and how they learn, transcripts, all that kind of thing. So I hope that this was informative for you. I enjoyed talking about it. I always do. Thank you.